All right, our regularly scheduled council meeting of February 1st is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
And we have some visitors from PAC 92 who are going to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. If you'll all rise. Hey, you come up here?
I pledge allegiance.
Good job. Thank you, guys.
Nice.
And where does PAC 92 meet at?
The church on the corner of Lowell and Bellevue, St. James.
Low and Bellevue. Okay, thanks. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I just, for council's information, I will be requesting an executive session to request negotiating instructions on a real estate transaction, the sale of the Sternberg building.
Okay. Any other changes? Then that agenda is approved as modified. Minutes from the regular meeting of January 18th.
I have a few corrections.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 5, line 143, it says, of the city ditch, it should say city ditch trail. Same kind of correction, page 6, line 156. Page 11, line 324, add to the end, and the owners to pay the difference. And page 14, I need to check with you all on, but I think at lines 426 and 427, we should also add, Mr. Thielen will propose some changes. I believe the city clerk checked that and thought that was correct.
Okay.
That's all on that one.
Anyone else? Then the minutes are approved as modified. Changes to, additions, corrections of the January 25th minutes.
On page 3, we have at line 82 and following, you all received this in the mail from city clerk. I don't know, should we read that all into the vocal record here or just make the changes that we received?
Let's just make the changes.
And the same then on page 4, line 116, that also is on that page that we received from the city clerk.
Okay.
And then a third one, I believe, just a second. On line 109 on page 4, the fourth word should be trial instead of trail. And in lines 115, 116, actually 116, 117, conduct a survey of citizens, of Littleton citizens on meeting their museum and library needs.
Any other changes?
Thank you.
Okay. Then those minutes are approved as modified. Any new city employees?
No, sir, I don't have any tonight.
Okay. We have a guest citizen, which Councilman Brinkman is going to read.
This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize Eagle Scout Taylor Maurer and many of his friends and family members who volunteered to build an important trail connection in South Platte Park. The Beaver Pond Trail is a small footpath off the East Trail, south of the Mineral Underpass. It is a leisurely walk through wetlands to a pond and a bridge. Once upon a time, the trail made a continuous loop, but the beaver expansion of the wetlands flooded the area, and the trail was closed. South Platte Park staff gave much thought towards program use and environmental impacts, considering whether the trail should be reopened as a loop and reconnect with the East Trail. Minimizing impacts to the wetlands and maintaining great horned owl activity was the highest priority. South Platte Park volunteer and bird expert Eleanor Pickering mapped the area used by great horned owls and designated a trail route that avoided travel through these areas. Taylor spearheaded building the first half of the new trail, a total of 400 feet. Because of the hard work of these great volunteers, the bridge to nowhere is now the bridge to somewhere. The trail highlights the large variety of habitat found in South Platte Park, with grassland, scrubland, wetland, and river ecosystems that skirt alongside owl territory. Thanks to the work of these volunteers, it is an easy walk for any ability level and is a great loop for families with small children. Taylor said Cecily Mew is responsible for having the insight to see the need for the project, as well as being the counselor for it. Without her leadership, this project would not have been developed, and without the help of the volunteers, it would not have been completed. Cecily Mew has resigned her position with South Platte Park, and I think her last day was Friday, last Friday, and so she's moved on to another job, but we certainly do recognize her contribution to this and thank her immensely. So when I call your names, please come down. We would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Taylor Maurer and the volunteers he recruited for all of their hard work. Aaron Embertson, Nicole Fazio, Ryan Kaufman, Camille Coomer, Ethan Leslie, Denny Maurer, Tammy Maurer, Tara Maurer. This was a family affair. Ann McMillan, Mike McMillan, Steve McMillan, Mike McShane, Chuck Morey, Jared Morgan, Joel Peacock, Jordan Peacock, Justin Simpson, Ben Williamson, and Mike Zender. We thank you all for making South Platte Park even more enjoyable than it already has been. Obviously, the cold weather kept a few at home, so let's give these guys applause.
Okay, now we have Dave Lorenz for scheduled public appearance, presenting the Gold Medal Finalist Award,
along with John Ostermiller.
along with John Ostermiller.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's good to be with you this evening. I'm here on behalf of the South Suburban Park and Recreation District. Last fall, South Suburban was recognized as one of the 4 top park and recreation districts in the country at the National Recreation and Park Congress. It's an award that we are very proud of. While we were not selected as the top awardee, we are very pleased to be one of the final 4. This is 2 years in a row we've been one of the final 4. Over the years, South Suburban has been an outstanding park district. in the eyes of the NRPA. We have been a finalist 9 times and won the top award 3 times in our population class, which is 100,000 to 250,000. So when we compete for the gold medal, we are up against park districts and communities of that range. I'd now like to introduce Dave Lorenz, Executive Director of South Suburban, to explain a little bit more about the gold medal program. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I did bring the gold medal plaque with us. We also have a short video that we'd like to present to you and the audience. The only thing I'd like to add is in the Parks and Recreation profession, the gold medal is like the Academy Awards and the Oscars. And although we didn't bring home the Oscar, we do have the nice recognition. And this is for excellence in Parks and Recreation management. As John said, over the years, we've accumulated 3 of the finalist awards and 9 of the recognitions. And after you've won the grand award, you're not eligible for 5 more years. So you can see we have a long history of success in the community. And I think part of the reason our success is because of the relationships we have with the cities in our district, the school districts and the county, and the community organizations that support us, as well as the community itself. And I especially want to thank the Littleton Council and the staff at Littleton. You've been great to work with over the years. You've supported us on projects. You've shared funding scenarios with us on projects, and I think it's been a great relationship. Unless you have any questions, I'd like to just turn to the video and let you watch it. As you watch it, I hope you'll see something new about South Suburban that you've never seen before, that you might want to try, or a program that you didn't realize we had that you might want to join. So if you have any questions, maybe we can take them after the video.
Thank you, Dave.
There's a challenge in providing park and recreation services to a population that's accustomed to being well served. And that challenge is best countered by asking, how does a district stay fresh, innovative, and responsive? For South Suburban Park and Recreation District, south of Denver in a vibrant suburban region, the formula for managing well includes 3 essential elements: listening, planning, and performing. That's what South Suburban has done for 50 years, and that's how it rewards its citizens for their loyalty and support. South Suburban is a prior Gold Medal Award winner, yet it may be helpful to look at how the district is able to serve well by continually providing facilities and programs to meet the needs of its citizens. South Suburban has a long history of listening to its constituents. A citizens group in 1999 heard what improvements residents wanted to finance and created the Gold Medal 2020 plan for a district-wide renovation and construction plan. Taking the case to the voters allowed citizens to lift tax restrictions and approve $20 million in general obligation bonds for specific recreation centers and athletic fields, and a $1 mil property tax increase for open space, parks, and trail expansion. But it didn't take until 2020 to see significant improvements. The opening of the Lone Tree Recreation Center in 2003 in a fast-growing municipality, and the debut of the Buck Community Recreation Center in densely populated Littleton in 2005 were highly visible and successful promises to voters. The purchase of a multifaceted recreation complex, which had been in bankruptcy, expanded the offerings in the East region of the district and provided the Colorado Avalanche NHL team with a highly visible practice rink. Conversion of a 90-acre landfill and acquisition of adjacent land to assemble a 140-acre multi-use athletic complex with 5 artificial turf fields, the Lorenz Regional Park, answered immediate needs and provided possibilities for more fields in the future. Citizen users noticed immediately. The district's customer approval rating went from 75% to 90% in a 4-year period. An essential element is planning, with a constant sense of what's needed next. South Suburban has a $43 million operating budget, with 218 full-time employees and over 1,400 seasonal employees to take care of almost 3,800 acres of parks. The district's facilities include 4 recreation centers, 4 golf courses, 114 athletic fields, 26 multi-use courts, 58 playgrounds, 8 pools, 69 tennis courts, 2 ice arenas, 82 miles of trails, a BMX track, 2 dog parks, 3 skate parks, a botanic garden, and much more. South Suburban serves over 140,000 residents in 6 cities and 3 counties along Denver's constantly expanding southern boundary. From high-income communities to blue-collar urban towns, the district is a mix of interesting demographics, ethnicity, and lifestyles. The district's most visited sites are places like Hudson Gardens, the new recreation centers, and the always busy athletic fields, trails, and parks. But as former board member and Littleton Mayor Jim Taylor points out, citizens know they're being well treated, and they are being heard.
Our citizens are well served by South Suburban Park and Recreation District. They keep the parks well maintained, the recreation centers are well equipped, and programs are what the citizens really want, so they respond well to our needs.
South Suburban board members, stretching back 50 years, established a philosophy of local access to neighborhood recreation and regional complexes for organized and intense athletics and league sports. Yet the district has always been able to balance the neighborhood needs with the recognition that suburban communities are constantly evolving, with new residents, developing families, longer-term empty nesters, and retirees and seniors. This neighborhood development cycle is not new. Legacy homeowners age and sell. Young people move in and then move up in housing as their families grow and their recreation needs change. Add to that cycle the newer elements of at-risk youth and awareness of healthier outdoor adventure, especially in Colorado, and the competition for leisure time, and you'll see a district like South Suburban adapt its offerings and programs. With programs like South Suburban's Living Well and NRPA's Step Up to Health Obesity program, there's a greater need for skate parks, trail networks, and full-scale exercise and aquatic centers. This district's diverse population area also plays a role. The urban core is just a light rail ride away to downtown Denver, but citizens want to relax and recreate when they arrive home. Like much of the West, there's a sizable Hispanic population in specific communities and evident in the leagues and activities.
Sheridan has a very diverse population, and I think that South Suburban is meeting the challenges because they all have the same kinds of desires and goals that they're trying to achieve. The parks, the trails, the ballparks, that is the foundation of Sheridan's community, and South Suburban has helped us build that.
And the populations of core cities like Littleton, a strong base from the 60s and 70s, are aging but still vibrant, active, and not content to fade into obscurity. Long-range planning for South Suburban includes the obvious, such as land acquisition and facilities expansion. A major feature of South Suburban is the South Platte River, located in the heart of this district. As a leader in the South Platte Working Group, South Suburban helped to obtain $25 million in grants and matching funds to assure that the South Platte Management Plan preserves parkland and open space along the Platte's banks as a nature laboratory for school children and amateur naturalists and birdwatchers. The fact that there's the 14-mile Greenway dual trail for walkers, cyclists, and joggers leading to downtown Denver opens the river's atmosphere to thousands every day. The South Suburban Foundation has long had a major role in implementing the Greenway Plan. Likewise, the 80-mile-long Highline Irrigation Canal has a significant presence in the backyards of many South Suburban homes, and the district is an active player in preserving the canal for recreational use. Among the less visible district initiatives are establishing responsible herbicide and pesticide policies. When the West Nile virus became a threat, the district was a leader in identifying and remediating potential problem areas for the mosquito-borne disease. And with conservation awareness top of mind, the energy-saving practices at recreation centers and in irrigation management take on even more importance. Visible, yet vital. That's how to describe the most innovative aspect of the district's operations. South Suburban's website and social media allow customers to register for classes and programs online, rent picnic shelters, even obtain team schedules and tea times. The website is a marketing tool that helps track customer preferences. At least 100 questions a month are answered from district patrons. The heavy investment in computer systems also allows the district to manage point-of-sale transactions for everything from daily basics to golf shop merchandise. And employees use the intranet sub-hub for internal communication and convenient forms reference. What couldn't have been done 10 years ago is now routine at South Suburban. There is no question that South Suburban provides its audiences with easily accessed facilities and support. Whether it's something as basic as the design of a warm water therapy pool or the offering of programs for a variety of age groups, South Suburban keeps its ear to its constituents.
South Suburban is an extraordinary recreation district. When we as a community think what's important about our community, it's always in the top 3. The other one is education, and then maybe just overall quality of life and housing. South Suburban is extraordinary.
Volunteers are important in all of South Suburban's consumer outreach. They may be leading nature walks, serving lunch at a senior event, or coaching teams and officiating. The interest in the district's programs is demonstrated by the depth of volunteer support. The ability to recommend new ideas or comment on what's working and what's not is easy to manage through face-to-face contact and the website. In fact, full-time community relations managers are responsible for keeping pace with the changing needs of neighborhoods, as well as special populations. Despite South Suburban's successes and its long history of awards, especially in the past 8 years, that 2020 goal is part of the overall fabric of serving its community well. In 2008, a new citizens group updated the 2020 plan to continue advancing facilities and programs. The re-emergence of young families requires updating of play-friendly spaces. Encroaching growth reduces the inventory of available open space. Athletic programs for young people constantly have to be developed that compete with the time taken by video games, Facebook, and TV.
One of the best things about South Suburban is being part of an organization that's been first-rate for a long time. And it's a challenge on a daily basis to maintain those standards to enable us to be first-rate. We're not just first-rate as a board, we're first-rate as a staff, we're first-rate as programs, parks, open space, trails. Everything we do for the residents. And that's what the challenge is to maintain that and go beyond it.
Colorado's South Suburban Park and Recreation District is one of the most admired in the nation. It's secure in offering the best to its citizens, and it's avoided controversy because of its style of management and its practice of listening before acting. The district is not only worthy of recognition, it is emulated for what it's been able to do for 50 years. South Suburban demonstrates every day that it continues to serve well by managing well.
Just in closing, thank you for your longtime support. It's been a wonderful relationship. Thank you.
Certainly, congratulations on being in the top 4 again, John and Dave. Appreciate it.
Dave, I was going to ask you real quick. That's an impressive video compilation of all the attributes that make up South Suburban. What was the process putting that whole thing together? How was that thing done?
Teresa Cope, our communications director, put it together with staff, and they hired a photographer and a person that did the script. We wrote the script, and then they read it into the video.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, how long did it take them to do it?
Not too long. You're notified in March that you're a finalist, and you have until September or so to turn in the video.
Okay,
So it has to move pretty fast.
okay. And as far as things we might want to do that we didn't do previously, I want to do one of those ring things where that guy is the gymnast. So how do I do that?
I'll call you tomorrow.
Lots of weightlifting.
Check your insurance policy, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to unscheduled public appearances, which is time for anyone to come down and address us about any issue, ask any questions, make any comments, or talk about anything that's on the agenda that's coming up. Come on down, Pam.
Good evening, council members and city staff. My name is Pam Chadbourne, and I live at the corner of Crestline and Nevada Street in downtown Littleton. I'm here to continue my advocacy for a street lighting update for downtown Littleton and documentation of a street lighting plan. So I'm going to come up and pass out a copy of a bid for a street lighting study that I got from Clanton and Associates. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And just two things tonight. So Mr. Blasto was good enough to spend a lot of time on the phone with me a week or two ago. And apparently 25 years ago, some city staff folks got together. There may have been some historic conservation folks and maybe a city council member. They met about street lighting. They decided on the Sternberg Acorn fixture. No notes and no record of that meeting was made. And Mr. Blaston is the only surviving member of that committee. I say surviving because they're not just not on staff anymore, they're apparently not living. So we have Charlie as our record of that meeting 25 years ago, which chose these light fixtures for downtown Littleton. And then last fall, a graphic was made that shows 330 lights north of Main in the residential area that I live in. And that's the only plan. There is no technical basis, there's no analysis for these lights or where they go. Mr. Blast and Mr. Dietz walk along where lights will be and pick the sites. So I advocate a study. I contacted Clanton Associates. They are, among other things, a consultant for the Excel, the negotiations of the 10 cities with Excel. And they're nationwide, they do projects everywhere. So I think I mentioned them before. I wanted to give you the bid that they gave me back because it gives us a concept of what we can get for a certain amount of money. And I'm hoping that the city council will try to get this into the budget. I realize that this year is a bad year, maybe next year. And that would give us residents an understanding of why we're paying the money for the fixtures in the first place and why we'd be paying for the operation of the fixtures. And on December 7th, what I tried to reflect was that I'm fairly certain the city council, by helping us reduce the number of these fixtures, I think there's 200 too many in that 330 plan. And just by reducing that in the downtown area, you can save future taxpayers and city councils $27,000 a year base cost just for electricity, just for operating those lights every year. And this is a great opportunity, I think. This study will pay for itself in the first sets of installations of the light fixtures alone, not to mention the operating budget yearly. So just wanted to give you those two pieces of information. There is no documented plan now. We can get, though, a very good study for, I think, a real reasonable cost that will pay for itself very quickly. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else? Come on down. You can state your name and address, please.
My name's Rick Scarborough. My address is 1516 East Fremont Circle South. It's actually in Centennial.
Okay.
I'm here tonight to represent my son, who's a 14-year-old eighth grader at Redirections Elementary in Littleton. And I'd like to bring to the council's attention, there's a business on Littleton Boulevard that my son and some of his friends, all under 14 years old and under, walked in and purchased 10 ounces of a product called K2 synthetic marijuana. The product is sold over the counter to them. They use the product for, I don't know, a couple days. They also bought paraphernalia from that business as well to smoke it. My son, unfortunately, took the pipe to school. It was discovered at school. He was rightfully suspended for it. And then I got involved with it with the Littleton school officer. They called me and I talked with him, and he was telling me about this. I've never heard of it before. And I've lived here on and off for 41 years, and I was shocked to find out that a product like this is being sold inside of our city. And I would imagine that the council probably doesn't know much about it either and know that it is being sold here. So I came here tonight to bring that fact to light.
Actually, I truly appreciate you coming in tonight. Coincidentally, I'm introducing or hoping to introduce legislation through the council regarding spice, which is a synthetic marijuana. We're having a study session. I believe it's scheduled for March. So I think it's the second Tuesday in March.
Okay.
Where we will be, it will not be a formal meeting, it's a study session meeting held in that room. It will be televised, and we'll be getting a bunch of information on the drug or on the substance. There is activity at the state level that they're working on some legislation in there too. So it is not as well-known as other substances out there, but you're right, it's out there, it's in Littleton, and I appreciate you coming down tonight. Thank you.
Curious what merchant was selling.
My son purchased it from Neighborhood Corner Food and Gas, which is at 1009 West Littleton Boulevard, on the corner of Littleton Boulevard and Hickory. I actually walked that area. I went in myself to see it because, I didn't know much about it. I wanted to see what it was. And they have a display of pipes that you can use to smoke this, which my son also purchased from there at the same time, right sitting on the counter. Now, my son said that he bought this container right over from them. I didn't see it in there, but back. He told me that all the school kids throughout the know of this place. I don't really know or not, but it's my understanding that they're not allowed to sell it to anybody under 18 years old. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's my understanding. I went through up and down the block and talked to some of the business owners who I know of them or know of their families through the years I've lived here. And there's 5 big business owners right around them. Drink Wine Mortuary, Carl, the manager, and each one of these people gave me permission to use their name. I spoke with him. He reported that they were experiencing a higher amount of walk-by opportunity crimes from their business, and they attributed it to the people that are hanging around this business. Now, but they, walk by like breaking into cars, stuff like that. I also spoke with John Harrison, who's the manager of Randy's Tire and Auto. And Hancock was not available, but he's the owner. But John, the manager, told me that they have had 2 instances, both reported, where cars in their parking lot have been jacked up and the tires have been stolen off of. And again, they attribute it to the people that are frequenting this business. There's 3 other businesses. They didn't have any complaints, but there was another business that I saw myself in the newspaper, a building across the street that had been broken into that made the news a while ago. So whether it's attributed to this or not, the fact is that this drug or this substance is being sold to minors in the city of Littleton. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention to see what we can get done about it.
Just to confirm what Councilwoman Brinkman was saying, for people who might be watching, it is scheduled for March the 8th. Councilwoman Brinkman has requested the city attorney to draft an ordinance, so they will be reviewing that. I believe we'll also get some input from the police department. As the councilwoman said, I think the state legislature's looking at this. This whole synthetic marijuana thing is kind of a new wrinkle. So the council will get briefed on what some of the legal enforcement are. Councilwoman Brinkman said it'll be in front of them for them to take.
And I've done some research because I didn't know anything about it either until 2 weeks ago. And it's illegal now in 11 states. And, you know, I understand that it's a new product and the council probably hasn't even had a chance to address it yet. So I appreciate the fact that you're doing something about it. So does my 14-year-old son.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
Heather, you want to come up, Chief of Police?
Chief Coogan, Police Chief.
Just one comment as
Heather, just introduce yourself for the TV audience, please.
I'm sorry, Chief Coogan, Littleton Police Department. Just one comment as Councilwoman Brinkman brought up. We are going to be discussing an ordinance to control the sale of this. There is no law in the state governing this at the moment, and so there isn't a law that makes it illegal to sell it to anyone or anyone under 18. It just simply doesn't exist at this point, so we haven't been able to enforce this. And it is a problem, and we are aware of it, but we don't have the tools to deal with it right now.
And just out of curiosity, this is smoked?
It's my understanding, yeah, my son was in possession of a pipe and they were smoking it. Since I've done research on the internet, I believe they can smoke it. I think they can all eat it as well. I really honestly don't know.
Okay. Bruce?
Jim, I don't know, it sounds like the specific product notwithstanding that there's enough potential ancillary activity that's not particularly satisfying, that maybe it's worth having a look from a code enforcement perspective and or just, you know, loitering and so forth and so on. I don't know if that's something that staff could noodle on.
We'll certainly take a look at the area. I mean, none of these businesses have contacted us directly, but we can do a knock and talk.
Great, okay.
But clearly we'll address it at the study session, because we do think it's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask Chief a question? Since we're hearing reports of crimes apparently that, if I understood right, we've not been hearing about here. We're getting secondhand knowledge of them. Is there a way to use the Business Watch to encourage people there to report, or maybe not all of them belong to Business Watch?
We can certainly look into that and contacting them. That information is out there every day on thecrimereports.com.
But I meant a way to email them and say, you know, geez, this was brought to council's attention, and we hope that if you're experiencing crimes, big or small, that you let us know.
Yes.
Because I think if you were hearing those reports, you'd have at least some random additional patrolling going on there. You know, not just concentrated, but catching people off guard, so.
Yes, ma'am. We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Rick? That's okay. Anyone else? All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda which can be adopted by a simple motion. In theory, the consent agenda items are non-controversial. We'll find out. First item is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Great Outdoors Colorado. If you can read that by title, please.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton, Colorado and the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the City Ditch Trail Project.
And this is an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and GOCO, which is, GOCO requires in order for us to receive a $500,000 grant from GOCO. It basically says that we'll really do what it is that we say that we're going to do and that it will be operational for a period of time. The project is estimated to be about $973,000, of which GOCO is contributing $500,000 of that. Item 7B is an ordinance amending the Denver water contract.
I request we pull that item.
The second item, the Denver water item? Okay. In that case, we have one item on our consent agenda. If
Mr. Chair, I
somebody-
move that we approve consent agenda item number A.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve our consent agenda item with the resolution agreement. Any discussion?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay, let's go back to our ordinance, and if you can read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving a water service agreement with the City and County of Denver Board of Water Commissioners.
Okay. Phil?
Yes, I really did appreciate the special session information from last week, and I'm going to start with a position that I'm not opposed to working with the Denver Water Board in establishing a new agreement with an understanding of the challenges that are addressed with regard to the service area and long-term planning. What I will raise as an issue is to make sure that the City of Littleton is indeed getting true value in the renegotiation, and we aren't leaving some items on the table. There were particularly 2 additional items that were identified last week that I noted that didn't seem to be in any of our discussions before, or at least ran counter to the understanding I came away with. First is with respect everyone around us being either in the same boat or having a longer term access to water that would say, maybe the value isn't quite as great. And particularly with regard our neighbors that we also provide fire protection to in Highlands Ranch. And in further research, understanding that their drawdown of the aquifer that they're currently doing to provide their current water supply is certainly somewhat temporary, and that the arrangements around the WISE project are certainly not assured in that. Second item is that through our wastewater treatment plant, the City of Littleton is in a position, and I realize it's a jointly owned element, but Englewood is not in the service area, does provide some element of contribution to the water supply. I realize it may not be factual, but on the accounting basis, and this was what Mr. Little indicated, that any Blue River or I think it's Blue River water, is that the correct term?
That's correct, yes, sir.
We get to receive, or the service area gets to receive 2.5 times credit for that. And so the City of Littleton is actually contributing in elements of a water supply. And as we've gone through our discussion, I think we would be well served by spending some money to engage someone, maybe an independent consultant is the term I would use, to help us determine and assure that the value that we're getting in the contract renegotiation is indeed true.
Okay.
Am I hearing you say that if Highlands Ranch draws down their wells and the aquifer goes dry, we are going to be responsible for their water?
Actually, Mr. Little said one of their concerns is whether they're part of it or not, that's there. Joe, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that we would, but in some of the discussion, we were told that, or at least my recollection of some of the statements were that the folks around us are already taken care of. And that was a reason to have maybe the particular value or being satisfied with the particular value that we'd be getting for it. So I'm not suggesting that we necessarily hold on to the annexation, but in valuing the contract, I think we might be missing something in its value.
Go ahead.
Perhaps what I ought to do for the potential audience is summarize what's the contract changes before we discuss the contract anymore. What's proposed in the ordinance is a amendment to the water contract that we have with Denver Water that was originally signed by the city sometime in the early 70s. That contract contains a provision that allows or requires Denver Water to supply water wherever the city boundaries go, which has traditionally meant that as we annex new territories, Denver Water's been obligated to provide water to those territories. The new contract has a number of changes, most of which are improvements to the existing contract. However, the change that's of significant value is the removal of that provision that would in essence, fix the combined service area for Denver Water to its existing boundaries. Contract provides for 350 acre-feet of additional water that Denver Water would provide to Littleton for any areas that Littleton would annex beyond the city boundaries as they exist now. In return for that, Littleton would get a payment of $2.1 million in cash, part of it this year, part of it next year. Denver Water would spend approximately $400,000 to convert the Geneva Lake area from potable water to non-potable water, which saved the city of Littleton approximately $30,000 annually. There's been some talk in emails that I've received about provisions in the contract guaranteeing rates between Littleton residents and Denver residents. The existing contract that we have with Denver Water does not make that guarantee. The new contract with Denver Water also does not make that guarantee. However, what it does is strengthen the relationship between outside city users and inside city users in events relating to water shortages, where previously there was a set of steps delineated in the contract or our existing contract that Denver Water would go through. If they went to a water shortage, in the new contract, what it states is water shortage provisions would be implemented equally inside the city and outside the city, which is actually improvement on what our existing water contract is. This ordinance, if we approve it on first reading, would set a public hearing for the second reading on February 15th. Now, further discussion. Bruce.
The commentary, or, well, commentary is maybe the wrong word. Some of the feedback I've gotten on this issue involves the view that the open-ended annexation supply attributes or language in the existing contract is worth an extensive amount of money to the city of Littleton. And I think there's three value propositions involved in this, and I guess I would make the observation, and then Phil, ask you to maybe just sort of clarify your thinking on this stuff. The city of Littleton does not own the water that we consume. The contract, as I understood it, basically the water belongs to Denver Water. We get to use it and we get to return it to them ostensibly through the South Platte River and the sewer systems. And we don't have to treat it before giving it back to them. But we don't have ownership claim to it. We basically get to just use it. So to the extent that we ever would have annexed Highlands Ranch for the sake of an argument, we would be giving Highlands Ranch access to Denver water, but the only advantage to Littleton in that regard would ultimately be directly any sales tax revenue and property tax revenue and fees and so forth and so on that we would get from annexing a given piece of property. It wouldn't be from the sale of water. So the water, in terms of the old contract, is a means to an end, if I understand how the arrangement works. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The second attribute of this whole thing is the way the revised contract is set up with what I like to refer to as the water bank, where we get 20 years access to 1,200 acre feet that we can lease to somebody else, ostensibly a developer who may use it to get a project off the ground until they can get their water fully funded, if you will. It provides us with a unique opportunity to attract more capacity into the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant, which at this juncture in time has excess capacity to what is being utilized by both cities, Littleton and Englewood, and the various districts that that the plant serves through the Littleton and Englewood connectors. So as a result of that, we've got debt capacity and debt service on that. We've got operating expenses that continue to go up that are going to get borne our share by the City of Littleton citizens. And to the extent that we can use the water bank to entice or invite developers of projects, of housing projects, to connect to our sewer system, we can provide ultimately funding to help pay some of that debt and operating costs down and keep the burden off of the citizens of Littleton, which I think is a very legitimate value to the community. The third value attribute ends up being what's it worth to Denver Water to get certainty for their supply arrangements under the terms and conditions of various legal decisions and protocols that they have to adhere by, and the fact that we've got a contract that's open-ended makes it challenging for them to meet their commitments. And I think, if I understand where you're going with this, Phil, is you're sort of looking at that third component piece, which is basically there's some element of value which we're getting a level of compensation for from Denver Water, but your concern is that there might be more value that Denver Water would theoretically see from modifying this contract that could ascribe to the citizens of Littleton. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay, well, you put 3 items on the table,
okay.
So let me try and address them in order. First of all, as I understand Western Water, and recognizing that I'm a relative newcomer to Western Water, having come to Littleton in 1990. I won't claim a full understanding myself personally over this, but that no one really owns the water. What you have is an ability to use it or divert it. So you can sometimes exchange that, where you can take water at some point in time by giving water use at another point in time. So even Denver Water doesn't own it. They're distributing, and we're considered a sub-distributor in the contract, even though it's called distributors. So that's one. I don't deny the potential value of the water bank that might exist. It's not a certainty that it delivers value to Littleton in that, but it gives us a potential hope in some of that, and maybe some of that can actually be solidified as we might study the value or have the value studied of the contract. And certainly the third item is the one that's truly unknown, and I'm not sure we've done our due diligence on that as a group, and engaging an independent consultant to take a look at that is something that I think would be of value.
Thanks.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yes, sir.
Having lived here all my life and having seen what our water system was, I suppose in a way I felt that the flood of '65 was God sent as far as Littleton. We didn't have enough water to supply water to Broadway that far with what water we had. So for me, when Denver stepped in after the flood and gave us a big boost, put us on they went on our lines and we had some good clean water. I was at the end of the line then, and about once a month, they have to come up and open it up, dump out all of the sand out of it. And that's the kind of situation we had for many years. My prime concern with Denver Water is that we have a contract with them that is good for our citizens. They're not taking anything away from us, and I was surprised that they would even offer us any money. The system as it is now guarantees us, if we want to annex on our periphery, we can do that. It's not saying we can't. It's given us plenty of water, 1,200 acre feet, and you have to remember that 1,200 acre feet only provides, an acre foot only provides for 2 families, actually for 1 year. And they're going to do all of the watering here at the city center, and that is worth a lot of money over the years, probably $30,000 a year. I am entirely satisfied with our situation here in the amended contract because it's not taken away from us at all. And in the future, Littleton is guaranteed if we grow inside, they will take care of us. That's it. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I have 2 questions on the contract since this has been pulled. On the last page of the contract, in the top 2 lines,
The one that says attest or the one that says City and County of Denver?
On page 14, I think.
Oh, okay.
oh, I'm sorry. The body of the contract. The last sentence, the board in the top paragraph that ends on 14, the board shall pay $1 million within 60 days of execution of this contract and $1.1 million on or before January 10, 2012. That has to be paid in 2012, doesn't it? Or can it be paid in 2011? I thought there was a Tabor issue.
A what issue?
Tabor?
Tabor? No, no, ma'am.
Okay, so
It's
they
not a-
could,
it's not a
they could pay it all within,
That was the, what, no, ma'am,
I
there
mean,
were.
right after that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. It's not a Tabor issue for us. It was their request because those are different budget years for them. And what their board wanted to do was make that $1 million payment in their 2011 budget, and then they wanted to make the $1.1 million payment in their 2012 budget. So it was a budgeting issue for
Okay,
Denver,
but
not a Tabor issue for us.
Technically, the way this is worded, it could be paid in 2011.
Yes, ma'am,
But since
technically, the
that's
way
their
it's worded, I
problem, so-
think, and Suzanne was very much part of this, I think, as I understood from Patricia Wells, that their preference was to split the payment in 2 budget years. I think their intent was by January that they would make it very early in their 2012 budget.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
ma'am.
So we wouldn't mind getting it early, but they.
No, ma'am,
they
it
would.
was not an issue for us. It was for them to be able to feather those 2 cash payments in 2
Okay.
different budget years for them.
Okay, and then in 6.6 on page 14. I should have seen this and asked before, but this says, "This contract shall have no effect on Littleton's right to withdraw non-tributary and not non-tributary groundwater."
Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference?
That takes a whole water seminar
Oh, okay.
to explain what that is. It's essentially, this is what's called deep groundwater. And Littleton, some people in the water business call it Senate Bill 5 groundwater, but the city spent about 5 years adjudicating what's called deep groundwater. And I can get you a technical definition of the difference between tributary and not non-tributary, but it has to do with the regulation of groundwater by the state engineer.
Okay, but the way you just said it, you said tributary, but this says non-tributary twice. That's the part that was confusing to me.
Actually,
There are two separate definitions that I
Okay,
can
so-
provide to you. Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
at most, the average citizen would say, what is this gobbledygook? But for water courts, it has some meaning, and it has a very distinct difference in the type of groundwater.
Okay, I figured that it must be right with all the
Yes,
legal
ma'am.
folks
It looks
seeing it,
odd to
but
read it, but it is correct.
thank you.
It's a double negative. Any other discussion, questions?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the city council authorize an expenditure of up to $35,000 to engage a qualified independent consultant to evaluate the value of the water contract, and that the council suspend first and second readings until the analysis is completed, no longer than 3 months from now.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to spend up to $35,000 to engage a qualified water consultant to analyze what?
To evaluate or to determine or evaluate the value of the water contract.
Evaluate the value of the water contract and delay, I'll just say first reading,
That'd be fine.
since if we delay the first reading, we're delaying second reading. Okay, discussion. Bill, you get to go first since you made the motion.
As I've stated earlier, I think this is a large item. An expenditure of this range is about 1.5% of what is the cash value that is on the table. And I believe that going through this due diligence on something that could be or is of a significant value would assure that we're not making any kind of mistake in the process.
Bruce.
Conceptually, I'm not necessarily in disagreement. I guess my only concern with this is what would be the likelihood of having it happen more expeditiously versus, say, 3 months? Is there any way to stipulate like 6 weeks?
I said no later than. I don't know what the time
Fair
frame
point.
would be.
Do we have any?
Actually, I don't have no later than in the proposed motion. What I have is spend up to $35,000 to engage a qualified water consultant to evaluate the value of the water contract and delay the first reading.
I think we have it in the motion. He said to not exceed 3 months.
Okay, to not exceed.
Is that correct, Councilman?
Without having probably had any prior visibility to this line of conversation, does staff have any view to what might reasonably be done? What time frame might be incurred to do something like this?
I don't know if Suzanne does. I don't have any idea. I would be looking to Councilman Cernanek to actually give us a scope of work and a list of consultants to contact. Maybe perhaps he already has that information, but without knowing the depth and the actual scope of work of the evaluation and the product that you're going to ask the consultant to produce and what kind of either RFP or solicitation of proposals, I really don't have the ability. Suzanne, do you want to comment on it?
I mean, I think part of it depends on your definition of value. If you're just talking about what is the bottom line dollar amount, you could go and make a demand for, I suppose, as lack of a better word. Or you're talking about other kinds of clauses we could have in the contract that would be added value down the road. I mean, those kinds of things are probably going to determine how quickly something like that can be done. If it's the first one, maybe 6 weeks. If it's the second, that's going to take a longer analysis and then a lot more discussion with council.
Other questions?
Yes.
Jose?
Here we go again. Just recently, we had some council people wanted 6,000 for this and 6,000 for that, and we have busted our butts to keep a budget. Now you want 35,000 for another study, and I just keep wondering, I guess we don't have a money problem. It just keeps rolling in. I'm against spending any money for something like this because we've studied the hell out of it, and it's time to go forward.
Further discussion? I'm going to vote against the motion to amend the, actually, we don't have a motion for the main motion, so.
You want a motion? You want a
We'll
motion?
just pretend like we have one for right now.
Do you want a motion to do that?
Pardon? Clerk?
Don't need it, do we?
I'm sorry, it's not amending, it wouldn't be amending it.
You're right, so it really is a main motion, I guess, since it's not an amendment to anything. We don't have anything to amend. I'm going to vote against the new main motion, and for a number of reasons. One is, in my opinion, we have done the due diligence. I disagree with Councilman Cernanik. The letter came to us 10 months ago. We've had multiple executive sessions. We have discussed what the likelihood of us prevailing in court against Denver Water if we were to choose to annex and they were to choose to not supply us with water. We have discussed what the costs would be if we chose to annex and they chose to honor the contract and provide the water. We have discussed what the alternatives were in public hearings of what our annexation possibilities are. The value of the contract, I don't believe, will be determined by a water engineer. The value of the contract will be determined by our geographical location, our ability to annex, the potential annexation sites that exist, the legal ramifications of going to court if Denver Water were to decide not to honor provisions of the contract or honor provisions in the contract in a way that would be detrimental to the citizens of Littleton, and our alternatives for trying to enforce this. None of that really has anything to do with a water engineer. The provision of the contract, the reason why Denver Water wants to do this, why they're willing to pay us $2.1 million to do this, is because of annexation potential. And our annexation potential is limited by state statute that defines what it is that we can annex. What it is that we can annex has to have 1/6 contiguity to the city of Littleton. It also, state statutes says that any property that we annex, unless we completely surround it, if that property is over a certain value, an assessed valuation, I believe is $250,000, or over 10 acres, the property owner that we're annexing can opt out of the annexation. We have to have their permission. So what that really means is you can only annex somebody that wants to be annexed. The only piece of property that's physically qualifies to be annexed into the city of Littleton is Sterling Ranch, or the little sliver property on the west side of Sterling Ranch between the west boundary of Sterling Ranch and Chatfield Reservoir, and that's all residential. So the likelihood that we would want an all-residential sliver is pretty remote. Sterling Ranch has already sent a letter to the city of Littleton breaking off any discussion of annexation. They have said they are not interested in annexation. Sterling Ranch has presented to the Douglas County Commissioners that they have options to purchase the water rights and that they can procure the water for their development on their own. So the question really is how much is the value of this contract for us to be able to annex an area that we can't annex anyway? Because the only remaining alternative that we have that meets the statutes and meets the physical requirements would be Sterling Ranch, who already has the water and has said so publicly, and is not interested in annexing Littleton and has said so and told us publicly. So the real question is, how much is this worth? And the answer is, given our physical location, I think we're getting a smoking good deal here. So I'm going to vote against this motion because I don't think that a water engineer would be the qualified individual to be able to determine the value of the contract, and because we have been doing that work ourselves for 10 months. Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was not a water engineer, it was an independent consultant that was identified from that particular perspective, and I understand your opinion as to potential annexations. Yes, folks would need to be interested in that, but that is one of the purposes to go through this evaluation.
So you're proposing a consultant to evaluate annexation possibilities?
No, the independent consultant that was in the motion, it wasn't a water engineer.
Okay. Further discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Clark, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion fails.
Okay. Now,
You want a motion on the?
please, first, on the first ordinance on first reading.
I move the ordinance amending the 1970 service contract with the City and County of Denver through the Board of Water Commissioners be approved on first reading, posted on the city's website at the Littleton City Center, Bemis Library, and the Municipal Courthouse, and that a public hearing be set for February 15, 2011.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance on first reading, amending the 1970 service contract with the City and County of Denver. Discussion on this. And this sets the public hearing date for February 15th. Ready to vote? Oops. Am I ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilman Cernanik voting no. The motion is approved.
Okay. That brings us to item 9A.
Intersection Safety Program, Chief Coogan, or you, or Commander? Commander Christensen from Littleton PD will present this item to the council tonight.
Good evening, council. As the council communication goes, for some time we've been talking about the intersection safety program, and there's been some interest in expanding that program to some other intersections within the city. So what we did over the past few months, we had the company that we're currently contracted with go out and test some of the approaches of the intersections that we heard a lot of concern about, those being Broadway and Mineral, Broadway and County Line, Platte Canyon and Bowles, Federal and Bowles, and then recently we also looked at Prince and Santa Fe. So we have some information on there. Before we got to that, we actually looked back at what's been going on the 3 intersections that we did. The first chart in your council communication actually shows, when I went back and looked at the first 3 months of violations, the number of mailed violations, and I compared them to the last 3 months of 2010. And so you see the chart there, we've seen a tremendous reduction in the number of the violations at some intersections, some not so much. The most telling is at eastbound Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, and there's like an 83% reduction in the number of violations. That from the first 3 months that was in place till the last 3 months of this year. The rest of them, Broadway and Littleton Boulevard, those two have been in place since about August of 2009, so they've been in the longest. Northbound Broadway, Littleton Boulevard has a 52% reduction in the number of violations that are mailed out on those. If you remember right, the Santa Fe intersection, Santa Fe and Mineral, Santa Fe and Bowles, they come online like just this time a year ago, January 31st of 2010. So they've not been operational quite as long. You see some difference there, maybe not quite as much a reduction in the number of the violations, but significant number on some of the approaches. The one that is kind of interesting is southbound Santa Fe at Mineral. There's been almost no reduction in there at that particular one, traffic coming down there. As I said in the council communication, I just did not have the year-end accident statistics last week when I wrote this, so I did get those like Friday of last week, so I'll be looking at those a little closer. I have some of those numbers with me, but I gave you the accident numbers through the third quarter of last year for your review. So I think we're kind of at a point, and it's just kind of depending on what council wants to do, what kind of direction they would like us to do with these. We looked at those intersections I talked to you about. One that we need to look at is probably the eastbound Littleton Boulevard at Broadway. There are almost no violations there over a monthly period now. So we have a couple options there. We could ask the company just to move that. When I talked to the company briefly about that one approach there, they see this occasionally in some cities and it typically is because it's the same drivers that go through that intersection and that approach every day. So what we have is a learned thing, and that's apparently what's really happened at that intersection because of that 83% reduction in the number of violations there. The company, when they see this happens, they do one of two things. They either move that system out of there. They're not in favor of necessarily moving it. They would rather negotiate a reduced fee with the city and leave those operational, even at that approach. What they say typically, which I think is my understanding or from years in law enforcement, once you move that enforcement, remove the reinforcement from that, it creeps back up. The same thing works when we have a police officer working a certain area. As soon as he leaves for a short time, it creeps back up there. So as far as, that's one point, I guess the council needs to decide if we want to try and leave that one there. I think the company's willing to negotiate a lower fee to leave that one on that approach. The other ones we looked at, the first one we looked at was County Line and Broadway. We hear a lot from citizens about that intersection, as I'm sure some of you do too, at Broadway and County Line. I understand that at least it's on the agenda to try and redo that intersection, the lighting system of the intersection this next year. So I did not recommend doing anything with that at that point, although there is a significant number of red light violations at that intersection. But it probably does not warrant until we redo those signal heads at that location and see if that doesn't increase or decrease the amount of accidents and stuff at that intersection. The next one we looked at was Broadway and Mineral Avenue. The company, when they do their testing, both the northbound and the westbound approaches that intersection do meet their requirements for consideration in the company. Actually, the company does the testing on all the intersections. They want to make sure, and then they give us a report whether they think those intersections, and they check all four approaches there. Those two approaches at that intersection do meet their requirements. The one thing that's interesting in that intersection, there are quite a few of right turn violations there too, which the company does some right turn violations and some. We have not done that historically on the intersections that we currently have installed. And mostly because on all of those intersections there's an acceleration lane, so once after you turn onto the side street or the other street, there's a lane to accelerate. Broadway and Mineral does not have that on those two approaches. When you're coming northbound to turn eastbound or when you're going westbound to turn, there's no acceleration lane there. So that merits some discussion if council wants to, if we decide to move forward on that intersection, if we wanted to monitor the right turn violations. That's just another option. I did recommend that if the council wants to move forward, that we do get the company to work on setting up a system at that intersection on those two approaches. The third intersection we looked at was Platte Canyon and Bowles, and we have a lot of concern, Platte Canyon and Bowles, some citizens too, as well. I know councils had some concern there too. When they did the test there, the northbound and eastbound approaches do merit consideration to install some sort of systems there. Once again, that's another one we have the same issue with the right turn lanes. As far as traffic turning lane, and there's no acceleration lanes at that intersection either. So I did recommend, if council wants to move forward, that we also look at that intersection. The third one we looked at was Bowles and Federal. Although Bowles and Federal certainly meets the criteria, there's a lot of violations on both the eastbound and the westbound approaches at Bowles and Federal. I did not recommend that one, mostly because if we move forward on the other ones, that intersection is kind of in between the other two, and I'm hoping that people learn, you know, the real goal in all traffic enforcement is voluntary compliance, and I think we see that in the number of the violations. It's kind of that learned thing that, and I know from talking to citizens, they say those intersections are safer, the ones that have it now, because you don't, I drive through Broadway and Littleton Boulevard myself several times a day, and I can tell you that there's not that long string of cars go through that it used to be, so. So that was the only reason I wasn't sure we wanted to move forward on Bowles and Federal at this time. Just recently, we also looked at Santa Fe and Prince. The only approach, according to the initial testing, that would warrant consideration there is northbound approach at that intersection. All of these intersections, I may not have said it, but all of these intersections are historically on the top 10 accident locations within the city. So at this point, if council wanted to move forward on Santa Fe and Prince, because that is on a state highway, we'd have to start the negotiations and work out a contract with CDOT. They have to be approved on there. We did do that before and got CDOT to approve the ones at Santa Fe and Bowles as well as the one at Santa Fe and Mineral. But there is a process to go through there. I think that's real quick, the financial things. It's roughly the current contract with the company. It's about $5,400 a month per approach that we pay the company to do that. And then they handle all the processing and send the money that's collected back to the city. So that's the cost involved. So unless there's, I'll be happy to answer any questions, try and answer them. And I guess all we're looking for is to see what, if anything, council would like to do.
So you're saying if we have a intersection that has the lights now, the camera-ready lights, if it gets to the point where it's not producing any revenue, that's by less and less violations, you would move that to an area that is having problems?
That's one option.
One option,
that, yeah.
okay. I guess that's it.
Bruce?
So just to clarify, this basically says, yeah, $5,400 per month per approach at each intersection. So at the moment, we've got 7 approaches at 3 intersections. So running the math out, it's over $450,000 a year is what we're paying.
That's true.
American to do this, and then basically they're getting, we keep them neutral because they're cost neutral because they basically get most, if not all, of the citation fees.
No, that's not true. What it is, and it's covered under state law, there cannot be there's no tie between what we pay the company and the number of violations.
No,
so we pay the company the flat
50. All right, so net, I guess where I'm going with all this is net. What's for doing the systems, the approaches we've got in place at the moment, what's our net cost for, say, 12 months?
Well, the budget amount is, we do pay about, it's right at $450,000 a year is what we pay the company. Now, the revenue, each month when they reconcile things, because they also handle payments for us,
right,
that's all sent back through the court, and it comes back in.
We've actually generated a surplus for the first 2 years.
Okay, so it's slightly positive.
And I, to be honest, I've been focusing on the water contract, so I haven't read chapter and verse of this, but I think when the commander says it's net neutral, if we start to drop below a net neutral position, that we would pull that We would discontinue that service.
Yeah, the current contract has a cost-neutral clause into it.
Right.
And the fact that if it does not bring in enough to cover that, then the company, they try and make it up the following month, but the city's covered.
My simple understanding is if we don't at least come out neutral, then we would not have that contract or that signal, that approach in force.
Okay, and that was sort of more or less my understanding, but I guess the other important element of this whole thing is we've consistently, and I think that's table stakes. I mean, obviously, we'd prefer to be neutral to positive on the whole thing, but the orientation here for basically everyone listening is the intent here was always to do this for public safety purposes by virtue of the fact that there were a lot of concerns, for example, Littleton and Broadway with high school kids, walking across the streets and so forth and so on. So that was the overriding concern.
Yes, sir.
And it'd be the same thing with these other intersections is what you're talking about. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Jim?
Bill, I want to talk about northbound Santa Fe at Prince.
Okay.
That left turn bay there. The first person in line, if they're not really Johnny on the spot and get through there, the third car is entering on a yellow because the light is very, very short. So I've been in that intersection a number of times, and there'd be 5 or 6 cars behind me. I'm number 3 in line, and there are 5 or 6 cars behind me. I can understand why there are people running that as a red light because they get so frustrated of having to wait through multiple cycles in order to get to turn. Before we go to that intersection, I would really like to see if we can get CDOT, or if they control the light, to make that left turn arrow just a little bit longer so we can clear out that intersection a little bit more before we start moving.
Actually, Councilman, why don't I have Charlie Bloston come down because we control the signalization. It's CDOT's right-of-way, but the system
Charlie
is
also
ours.
knows I've called it a number of times when the left turn arrow did not even come on.
Council, I'm Charlie Bluston, Director of Public Services for the city. The city controls that traffic signal, not CDOT. And we have had malfunctions occurring for the left turn arrow, northbound to westbound. We had a bad camera. And just recently, we replaced that camera. Hopefully, we have more success with the left turning arrow, but we will check to make sure there's adequate timing to allow left turns without compromising the through movement that we're trying to accommodate mostly. But that bad camera did cause short left turn green arrows and sometimes getting no arrow at all. And that has been replaced.
Thank you.
Charlie, give us a delineation between the red light cameras and the camera you're talking about.
Yes, good point. The red light cameras are the photo enforcement cameras so that if you enter an intersection on a red, you will be photoed and then be issued a citation. The cameras I'm talking about are the ones that sit above the traffic signal and monitor what vehicles are in the lanes in order to give left turn arrows or through movements. It monitors motorcycles, cars, trucks, and some bicycles. And it will tell the computer there's a vehicle waiting in the through or the left lane in order to accommodate the traffic signal to make it turn the right color.
Thanks.
Kelly, could you put another log on the fireplace? It's getting a little cold up here.
Phil controls the energy
Phil with the sweater.
Bill Scrooge, is that what we're talking about?
Commander Brandt, the concern that I've heard significantly at the Broadway Mineral intersection has been, particularly during rush hour, with the intersection not being cleared of vehicles after the light has changed. Will the photo enforcement help catch bad behavior to help encourage good behavior in that area?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should have probably bring that up. Here's what happens when there actually camera takes, since we've started this process, we've routed all the phone calls that come to the police department. They all get transferred to me. So I call citizens
Congratulations.
back on a regular. And I have to tell you, there's not that many. There's sometimes I have maybe 5 or 6 a week. And then there's weeks I don't hear anything. Most of the time I get phone calls, it's like, I lost my copy, can you get me another copy? Or else, or else people call beforehand. I went through the intersection and it flashed at me and I wasn't breaking the law. And so I explained to them that, first of all, it may have been flashing at somebody behind you or somebody, just because it flashes, we all assume we're guilty, when the lights start going off. They're like, oh, it must have been me. But what really happens after when the camera, the computers actually sense how fast a car is moving through there and it thinks it's going to run the lights. It starts taking the pictures and flashes. And it also keeps a live video. Once that's done, there's two different people at the company actually review every one of those, comes into a queue. They look at it, see if they think it's a clear violation. And once they approve them down there, they come to us electronically, and then one of the police officers actually look at them. So they're looked at 3 different people. And only once we look at it and say, yes, that's a clear violation, then we approve it to be mailed out. So there is quite a bit of safety, and once if I explain that to people, they're like, oh, okay, and what the law really is, as long as you're into that intersection over the crossbar or crosswalk or the stop bar, as long as you're in there before it turns red, you're legal. So I get that question quite a bit.
Okay, but the issue that a lot of folks will raise is that there's not sufficient room on the far side, so folks get caught in the intersection, not able to clear the intersection, even though they may have legally entered the intersection, but they're far from clear of it. And what it does is it inhibits the perpendicular traffic to actually move at all, maybe in or through the intersection, which exacerbates the congestion and the traffic.
Councilman, you mean irrespective of what the signal is actually doing?
Well,
Is that the comment you're getting?
Okay.
So is it a capacity issue? Is that what you're saying?
It's a capacity. The traffic backs up on visualize it. Southbound Broadway, crossing Mineral.
Yes, sir.
5 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, the traffic is not clearing Broadway on the south side of the intersection so that the southbound traffic coming down Broadway can legally enter the intersection, but doesn't clear the intersection because they can't get through it.
Well, just like I enjoy playing city attorney when I get a chance, and Suzanne didn't kick me in the shins, I enjoy playing city engineer. So I'll speak to that. I think part of that has to do with some of the geometrics of the intersection. I think we discussed this during budget, but that we're going to do that drainage work there. And so actually, I think that probably it takes some engineering.
This one isn't. If you're talking about northbound.
Okay, I'm not tracking with you then.
Yeah, if you're talking about northbound or southbound on Broadway, you don't have the ditch issue. Okay, the ditch issue is.
But you have the clearance issue.
It's the traffic light at Jameson backs them up as they're going northbound, so they don't get through the intersection on Mineral. I think this is what.
Well, or it's backed up from County Line on southbound Broadway.
I'm not hearing.
Rather than wait at the intersection until you're sure that you can clear all the way across the intersection, they see a green light, they go across the intersection, they can't clear the intersection, the traffic doesn't move forward, the light changes, then the people on the side can't go, it's gridlock.
So is this a timing issue?
But it's not a violation to do that.
It's not. It's frustrating
If you're
to people
sitting-
because they can't clear the.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
if you
I'm just trying to
couple
figure, I mean, these are the calls that I get.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Are the ones here, and I'm trying to say, how do you get behavior to be such that if you can't get through the doggone intersection, don't go to it or go through, get into it, because then what you're doing is you're just making it absolutely worse for other folks.
Yeah, I can tell you the calls that I get, that's very similar thing is at Bowles and Santa Fe. I get calls every once in a while, northbound traffic trying to turn west. For some reason, the traffic's backed up and they get stuck in the intersection. And I always tell them, as long as you're into the intersection before it turned red, it's not a violation. You'll never get a notice.
Well, even if I'm sitting right in the middle of 2 lanes, blocking off 2 lanes that could be going eastbound on Mineral, okay? If I entered the intersection while the light was yellow or green, and I'm just sitting there, I'm okay?
You're okay.
Legally,
I mean, you're legally okay. I don't know if someone's going to.
I'm going to tell you, I see risks of rage. Okay, You
are talking about a behavior problem. I mean, we have been able to influence that with our you know, there are portable signs where we say your speed limit is and these kinds of things, and trying to get people to ease off a little bit. Again, this is strictly a behavior issue. We can scour the literature and see if somebody's come up with a clever, you know, flashing sign that says, please be nice, you know, don't gun it.
Yeah, and I'm not taking away from the eastbound, westbound on Mineral with the.
Yeah, I
ditch, because that
misunderstood you. I
slows
thought
the
it was
traffic
the
down.
turning signal, the turning movements that weren't clear, and you're talking about them just seeing it and then accelerating. Okay. That's a tough one.
Jim, what Greenwood Village did on Bellevue, they put in great big huge X's in the intersection and says, do not block. And that seems to work. Because if you're going on Bellevue toward I-25, toward the tech center early in the morning, there's a huge backup of traffic there.
Yeah.
But they've got those big X's on those intersections saying, don't block, and maybe
Well,
that
there you go. I mean,
might
some
help.
sort of visual, which is what we've done with, you know, we've done other visuals with the blinking, your speed is, and slow down, and those kinds of things, so.
But that would probably be enforceable because it would be a traffic control device. So if you marked it and blocked it on the road, then you could ticket for it because they would be in violation of some
It
traffic
is a violation
marking.
to block the intersection. Does not get enforced very often, but that is technically a violation.
Okay, then maybe Commander Brandt, you could say, if someone's there and they're blocking the intersection, I mean, it sounds like it is a violation. That's the behavior that at least I get more comments on, is folks that actually get, and, you know, they'll say, what can I do? The car in front of me didn't move ahead far enough. Well, that's because, but you're sitting in the intersection, and you're blocking that east-west traffic, and that's
Right.
what does occur.
Well, let us take a look at what Greenwood has done and maybe some visual prompting. We'll take it under consideration.
They painted it not only on the highway, but they put a sign in there as well, on the side.
All right, certainly worth looking at.
All right, are there any more questions pertinent to the, well, I guess this is pertinent, it's intersection safety. Councilman, what's your druthers? Do you want to put it on more intersections? Do you want to move it from intersections? Do you want to delay this until you get more data?
Are you needing a motion before we can do that, or are you letting
Either that,
us-
or we'll just move on to the next thing, so.
No, but I mean, can we, usually you want a motion before anybody gets to say something.
Okay, I want a motion, please.
You want to try it?
No?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move the staff be directed to prepare an addendum to the contract with American Traffic Solutions to add red light enforcement cameras at South Broadway and Mineral, as well as at West Bowles and South Platte Canyon Road, and to investigate negotiating lower fees at intersections that may warrant, that have had photo enforcement in place.
I'll second that.
Okay,
So then, now I can comment?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm not eager to do this until we have full data for a year at any new intersections. I also am a little reluctant to do more until we have some analysis of causes of the accidents. I did talk with Mr. Blaston today. I called him about the South Platte Bowles intersection to make sure I understood something that he had said at a previous meeting. Then we did some more talking. But in terms of causes of accidents, are there factors, as Mr. Blaston said, might be, are there factors that may be causing accidents that we could do something to alleviate? One example he gave is if there's inadequate lighting that may be contributing to accidents at a certain time of day, then we could do that before we decided we needed to put a red light camera out there. Or if certain approaches are causing accidents for certain reasons, then maybe there's something we can do about those approaches. What now I'm probably going to need Mr. Blaston to say this, but about the South Platte and Bowles one, I believe he said in terms of the paving projects that we approved, at our previous meeting, that they would look to see if there might be something that could be done as part of that project that might reduce frequency of accidents. Am I getting that right, Charlie? He isn't guaranteeing that they could do something, but that they would look to see if there was something they might do and that might subsequently reduce the frequency there. So I'm thinking I would like more data, more analysis of these things before we move forward. And why don't I just want to go ahead and put those up and just, get tickets for people and so forth? Because we have gotten several letters from people pretty irate. Maybe they deserve to get the tickets, but they were pretty irate about the cameras being used. And I want to be very careful as we move forward that we don't take on an image of, undeservedly, of doing this just to make money. But I have other reasons too, but that's enough. My main reason is I would like us to have more information and analysis.
Phil?
Yes, I'm not opposed to more analysis and information that would come of this, but I think moving forward and putting the contracts together, I will, once we get that, be looking at installation that would be after we complete the construction or the road construction efforts certainly at Broadway and Mineral. It wouldn't make sense to have the lights in operation while we're in the middle of those construction elements. So, but I'm being in a position of saying, hey, we're taking a look at these. Also being in a position to move ahead and possibly renegotiate some of those where we aren't getting what we need to get to at least be at a break even, such as it's seemingly the intersection at southbound Santa Fe and Mineral. So.
Jim?
I'd like to make an amendment to Phil's motion to delete everything after the two named intersections. In other words, after the South Broadway and Mineral Avenue, as well as West Bowles and South Platte Canyon Road, period, so that the last half of his motion would be deleted.
So in essence, it would be that the motion to be changed to I move that staff be directed to prepare an addendum to the contract with American Traffic Solutions to add red light enforcement cameras at South Broadway and Mineral, as well as West Bowles and South Platte Canyon Road.
That's correct.
Okay.
That deletes the last part of his motion.
I'll second that for discussion.
And the reason why I did that is because I think what Phil is proposing may be good, but we have no financial analysis as to what that's going to be and what the impact would be. And I'd like to have that before we'd take that step.
Any other discussion? Okay, council ready to vote on the motion of Jim's. Jim's was to chop everything off after the West Bowles and South Platte Canyon Road motion.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilman Cernanek voting no. The amendment is approved.
Okay. That brings us back to the main now amended motion, which is the same thing as Jim's motion. Discussion on that. Bruce?
I'm going to support this. I respect Peggy's points. I think they're well thought out, but I think the couple of things in here, the ones we've got, by and large, I think the statistics are reasonably compelling. Certainly, there's been a couple that have not performed maybe as we had hoped, but the majority seem to be. And I think from a safety standpoint, the memo makes the comment that they continue to hear positive comments from the community concerning the red light enforcement. And generally, citizens believe the intersections are safer. And I think that, to me, is the weightier of the two issues. I'd more or less prefer to err on the side of getting the intersections a little more safe. I know we've had a couple of aggrieved letters or aggrieved letters from aggrieved drivers who felt they weren't being fairly treated. But I guess, Commander, I mean, from your standpoint, the majority of these things, the feedback is generally favorable relative to unfavorable?
They are, and it's fairly common when people call, even when they're upset that they get a violation. I hear of pretty regular people say, but I want you to know I like those. I think it's good. I think it makes the intersection safe. You know, they don't like it that they got a ticket, but that's typical. I hear that
Other
a lot.
people.
Yeah, as long as you get everybody else that's in my way, it's okay.
There you go. So if we're talking basically two more intersections, and pretty clearly we've had the lady come in who was specific about Bowles and Playa Canyon, and then I think for any of us who have done Broadway and Mineral, can be an adventure too, so there you go.
Jim?
Assuming that this motion might pass, I would like to see a delay of installation till after Public Services has done the intersection work at both of these intersections. They were on our list to be improved, and I think it's unfair to do that until after the intersections get improved.
Charlie and I talked this morning. I'm not sure the installation of the cameras will be affected by the work that he's going to do, but they have to go through a permitting process if council moves forward and submit their plans to Public Works anyhow to get it done, so I don't think that's a problem.
At Broadway Mineral, we don't believe the construction would affect camera placement. At Platte Canyon and Bowles, it might. And we're starting the engineering work on all those projects very soon. So I may not even know until later in the spring when we will be doing that work. But we've already looked at the one at Broadway Mineral. We don't believe that it'll be affected by the reconstruction of the intersection. So we could go ahead and do that one. Let me make one other point in listening to the conversation. What can we do at, for example, Broadway and Mineral? Because we have so much traffic going through the intersection, people are backed up and then they get frustrated going through it. Craig Fessler and I have talked about this a lot, and his analysis is one I'll pass on to you. It's like putting 10 gallons of traffic into a 5-gallon container. Before that 6th gallon can go into the container, a gallon has to leave. And it does that. Part of the problem at Broadway and Mineral southbound has been construction in Highlands Ranch around 470 on Broadway. The traffic there has been pretty bad, and it backs up all the way to Mineral Avenue on occasion. Hopefully that construction work is complete, and now the 5 gallons of traffic can move faster through the intersection. No guarantee of that. But again, you're putting way too much traffic through an intersection that is designed for less traffic. Same thing occurs primarily in the worst location is on Santa Fe Drive northbound approaching Church and Bowles. It backs up past Church, halfway down past ACC. And everybody says, can't you give us more time on Santa Fe Drive? I can, but I got to take it away from Bowles Avenue. And Bowles Avenue carries a huge amount of traffic from Main Street going west and from Bowles Avenue going east. So when Bill says, or Commander Christensen indicates, you know, the number of calls sometimes have dropped off, for some reason when they drop off with him, they come to me. And they come in spades. And I get some very irate ones. Now I'm going to tell you, using the city manager's approach to how many, I don't get a lot. But the ones I get take a great deal of time to discuss. But we're trying to deal with all those and give everybody attention as to what their issues are. I will tell you, though, there are some places I cannot make timing adjustments on the signals without affecting significant traffic flow concerns. That's my editorial speech on this whole thing at this point.
Okay, any more of the discussion on the motion? The motion is to direct the staff to prepare an addendum to the contract with American Traffic Solutions to add red light enforcement cameras at South Broadway and Mineral Avenue, as well as West Bowles and South Platte Canyon Road. So ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilwoman Cole and Councilman Clark voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay. Now, Jim, I would suggest if you want to delay the cameras until after the construction.
I think staff will take care of it. I mean, we've had the discussion between, and Charlie has been here, and so has Bill, so I think they had to go through the permitting, had to go through Charlie before they can get a permit to put it in anyway.
Well, I thought what I heard was that they could do the cameras without the delay, so.
They can at Mineral, but Charlie said they may not be able to do it until the engineering is done.
It's not our intent to have some sort of interference out there. If it appears that the installation of the cameras will interfere with the engineering work, I think the engineering work is going to take the higher priority because we need to get that done.
And if it doesn't, then what happens?
If it doesn't, I don't see any, Charlie's saying at this point in time, he doesn't see any impact at Broadway and Mineral.
Okay. Does that make you happy?
The company won't want to move forward until they know that they're not going to get tore up because they cover all the expense of
Right.
putting the
Okay.
system in.
I wasn't sure if that's what Jim's intent was.
I think you heard the policy statement was don't be stupid, but
Okay. Thank you, Commander. That brings us to item 9B, which is a discussion on refinancing of courthouse certificates of participation.
Our Finance Director, Doug Farman, will present this item to the council.
Good evening. This issue was discussed by council last spring and reinitiated by council earlier this year. It's been estimated that the certificates of participation that were issued to fund the 1999 courthouse improvements, if refinanced, would generate a net present value savings of about $54,700 over the life of the certificates. The refinancing is similar to a home mortgage refinancing in that the lower rates and the estimated lease payments would be lower until they mature in the year 2024 and would generate lower interest rates, which would result in the net present value savings to the city. This was initiated by council, and I'd be glad to answer any questions about the preliminary analysis that was submitted.
Jim?
Did I just hear you say that this is a $55,000 savings over the next, total over the next 14 years?
That's correct. They would generate approximately $5,000 to $11,000 in savings each year in lower lease payments. Right now, those payments are coming out of the Special Projects Fund.
And how much is it going to cost us to do all of this? If I read this analysis correct, you're over $50,000 to do all this work to refinance it.
Those costs have been netted out from the net present value savings. So the savings is after
after you've done that.
Pay for those costs. That's correct. So that would be generating the actual net savings after those costs.
But it's folded back into the bonds or the loans or whatever it is.
Folded back into the par value of the certificates when they're sold to the market. That's correct.
Bruce?
Yeah, Doug, just to clarify, I think late this afternoon you'd sent out a schedule, and the net present value is a technical finance term that distills future cash flows to essentially time zero today.
That's correct.
All right, but the schedule that you sent out suggested that for 2011, we would save $11,000 in reduced interest expense, interest cost.
That's correct.
Another $5,200 in 12, $6,600 in 13.
Could you pause a second? Did you get that by email?
Yes.
Oh, after I logged off, I guess. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Even turn my computer on.
Thank you.
All right, so the annual savings is going to be from the right-hand side, these third column from the right is the way this works, it would be what's referred to as undiscounted, or it would be just the absolute dollar savings annually. And this is actually, the numbers in the annual savings column are the net savings for the two semi-annual payments. So the first one there is $11,063.25. That's what we would see as expense reduction in the 2011 budget if we decide to refinance.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. And the other issue that was on the table was the issue of allocable internal accounting or finance department staff time. And you also sent an email out on that.
Did everyone receive a copy of that schedule?
The earlier one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that one.
Mine
Thank you.
doesn't print out as neat.
Thank you. And I think this one, there's an issue here of whether we do a private placement versus a public offering, but that issue aside, Doug, if I understand this correctly, essentially you've got about $1,300 for the city attorney, $1,200 for yourself, $546 for the accounting manager. Break that on an hour, I don't know what the hourly rates are, but how many hours are we talking involvement in this?
That's an average of about 15 hours per each staff member that's been identified there.
Okay. So three people, 15 hours per person roughly, so 45 hours.
And that would be over, I think we're trying to do this, or we're estimating to do this in less than 3 months, so maybe 2 to 3 month period.
Okay, so it's
15 hours per each.
From your perspective, given your guys' workload and other projects you'd be looking at, does this strike you as being something that's pretty doable or not necessarily overly burdensome as far as your guys' resourcing?
I think we could absorb it. I think last spring we put in a lot of time, so we would just mainly have to update a lot of the documents is what it looks like right now, so that would minimize the amount of staff time we would have to put into it. So I think from the finance department staffing standpoint, we could absorb the extra work.
Okay, thanks
over
very
that time period.
Jim?
This is, you said over a 3-month time period before this would come to a conclusion. What happens, you've projected a percentage interest rate here, but if that interest rate goes up, it's more apt to go up than it is to go down. If it goes up, then these savings also become reduced. Isn't that correct?
That's true. There are a couple factors. Right now, the city, we're at AA minus rating with the credit agencies, but the city has not had a recent rating, so we would have to go back and get an updated credit rating. So the rate here is predicated on maintaining a AA minus rating, which we feel that we can maintain, but there is a risk there that if we do slip, that would definitely draw down those net present value savings. That's correct. And it is an estimated interest rate. So you're right, if the interest rate does rise in the market, depending on when we go out to market to sell those, it could minimize the present value savings.
Well, I'm just kind of looking at what happened at South Suburban. I happened to be at a couple of board meetings recently where they were talking about how the interest rates had been going up, and they lost a considerable amount because of the interest rate going up. It may be plateauing now, I don't know. I don't follow that stuff. But I know the discussion they had at their board level was how much they had lost because they didn't act soon enough. And so the rates were going up. That's what makes me think that this interest rate will also go up in the next 3 months.
I think generally speaking, you would like to try to act as quickly as possible, because the longer you wait, the more variables could play into the market. And you're right, there are a little bit more risks involved, but it would be more easily, not easily estimatable, but if we can act quicker, I think we can probably get a better rate.
Yeah, and for someone that does work in that space, I mean, you have a couple of things. One is it would have been great to have done this last year, because then it was like 75,000 rather than 50,000, and so it would have been 50% even more in savings. But you know, that's taking a look backward through the crystal ball. Whether it's private or we're going out for a bond rating, certain investors are restricted in what they can do in certain spaces. What is happening with the rest of the economy is, at least our balance sheet for the moment looks a little bit better than others. And so the likelihood that we can be in a desirable range, which means right now the rates are still fairly low in this area. And so, you know, being in a position to do that, yes, they have the risk of going up, but it's almost like the misfortune of others is to some of our advantage, particularly if we went private placement. I know a little bit more about that space, and folks are, you know, looking for quality paper in this space, and that's why there's some demand which would be in our favor.
And that would definitely be another option that the city would look at if the council wanted to move forward with the refinancing.
Bruce?
Doug, to the extent that we were to go forward with this and be able to commit, are the underwriters and so forth able to quote-unquote lock our rate so that it, you know, as long as we maintain the AA, if we went to a public offering, we could fix it at a certain point in time, and then the 3-month timeline is in order to get through the queue in terms of all the document prep and so forth and so on. Is that how it works?
No, that there's really not a locking time. I think we would have to be, you know, toward the end of the cycle to be able to get a guaranteed rate from what the investors would be willing to pay. So private placement might be a little bit different if we can, because we would be negotiating with potentially just one financial institution that would be buying the certificate. So there are some advantages and different disadvantages of both methods.
Okay.
You would hope with a public offering you would get a little bit more competition in the rates because you'd have more investors, more pool available.
Okay. Doug, if we were to bundle this with some very bad mortgages, call it a fancy name, and write a disclosure statement that's so complex nobody can understand it, would we then get a AAA rating?
I guess it depends on what jurisdiction you are.
Okay.
You can't come out of bankruptcy that way, Doug.
Just wondering, we got a AA minus.
I think we can. I think we can maintain our rating.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I don't know how many of you think that we've gotten out of our recession, but we're still in it, and I think this year is probably still going to be one of the worst years for us. And I'm not about to want to take a chance with moving anything right now. And also on financial details on the Denver water contract. It says here, if the city council approves a contract, the staff recommends that the cash be placed into the capital projects fund to help ensure future lease payments on the municipal courthouse and the expanded museum facilities. And this would be probably with the cops, correct?
I believe that's what it's referring
Certificates of
to as far as
vacation.
lease payments. And there are some other capital lease payments as far as police equipment in there.
But that's the yes, sir, you're correct. That was the intent of the staff recommendation.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So where would we be at if we went ahead with this thing? We'll just throw this out the window and forget it?
Get 1% on our savings, Joe.
1%.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Do we have a motion on this, actually?
I don't think so.
No, we have questions, so we don't have discussion. Do we want a motion? Does Bruce want to make a motion?
Why not?
Okay.
Somebody do something.
I move that council directs staff move forward with the City of Littleton refinancing of its 1999 outstanding lease purchase financing to produce an annual savings to the city.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to direct staff to move forward for refinancing the courthouse certificates of participation. Discussion. Bruce?
Just to sort of close the loop on this whole thing, I honestly, just a couple of observations, and we have gone around the block on this more than once. The transactional nature of this kind of thing is not simple. There are specialists and people who are technical in terms of this area of finance and law that do this kind of stuff, but it is a complicated set of documents to prepare and finalize. Nonetheless, it's not at all uncommon. One of the major issues we were waiting on when we discussed in April of 2010 was to get through the election to verify that this kind of arrangement was still valid to engage in. And I think at the time, we observed collectively that if we don't do anything with these, we are going to continue to do exactly what we have been doing, which is to pay lease payments or principal and interest payments. They will just cost more than if we refinance them. To the extent that Doug Farman has put the schedule together, and I think as Joe pointed out here earlier, you know, we've been through a painful budget process. We have got expenses that have been haircut, and opportunities to spend money come up, but it's difficult to do that given we've basically decided to rein spending in. Well, this is an opportunity, a fairly straightforward and simple opportunity, notwithstanding the complexity of the transactional documents, to put some money in our pocket. Staff time involved in it does not appear to be excessive, and I think for all those reasons, it's something that makes economic sense. And again, it's the citizens' money, and I don't have the burning desire to spend more of the citizens' money on a transaction, a lease or a bond type of arrangement than is absolutely necessary. I'd rather keep it and do something more valuable with it on behalf of the community.
And Phil? My quick comment is this is an opportunity to improve our income statement on a net basis. Most of the heavy work has been done. It was done last year, and this is an opportunity with a small investment to bring some real savings.
Any more discussion? Council ready to vote. The motion is to direct the staff to move forward with the City of Littleton refinancing of its 1999 outstanding lease purchase financing to produce an annual savings to the city.
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilman Clark and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
Jim?
Do we need to make a decision tonight on whether this is a public or private placement?
I would recommend that you just direct staff to undergo that evaluation, and we'll work with our financial advisor to come up with the best method and present the best possible net present value savings to the city.
You need further direction on that, Doug? I mean, we've discussed it enough. I think you've got it.
No, I don't think we need further direction. I think it's pretty clear.
The one thing we might need direction on is we don't have an attorney retained, and the last time we did this, the attorney was working on a contingency only to get paid if we closed. We're not sure we're going to be getting that kind of an arrangement this time. And is it council's desire to go ahead and pay as we go and to put those costs out up front? Because last time we came to council before we actually went to the bond rating at the moment that we were going to be expending hard costs. But in this case, we could start to see those hard costs immediately.
I would say that the motion included that. If you can't find an attorney to take it on contingency, then Unless the council disagrees with that interpretation.
I mean, since the direction is to go forward, I think that's fairly compelling as far as QTech is concerned.
But thank you for bringing that up. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, that brings us to reports. Mr. City Manager.
I don't have anything additional tonight.
I don't have anything.
Dr. Cole.
And I have a question. Seems to me we've had, it's been a long time since we had a Tri-Cities meeting. Do we have something in the works for that?
You know, Phil went home early with a cold, and I know he's talked to, I think, Mike Flattery over at Inglewood. There's been some discussion about maybe a spring meeting, but I'll just have to check with him. And there's nothing specifically right now.
Okay. And then for Charlie's folks, well, I appreciate all the work they're doing, freezing their butts off, excuse me for that language, freezing themselves to death, trying to deal with this storm and the freezing cold and pack snow and whatever. So kudos to them for all they're doing to try to keep us safe. Thank you.
Here.
Bill?
Yes, attended the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board meeting. Thanks earlier to John and David for sharing with us the gold medal presentation that they had. Several items were covered at their last meeting. One that was brought up here was the city's logo on appropriate park signs. That item has been tabled to be reviewed within a broader policy around signage. In addition to that, they've gone out for appraisals for the Jameson Service Center site in anticipation of a move that is estimated to be sometime in the fall from that site to the currently being developed Service Center site at the Boatworks. The board has scheduled a vision retreat that will be at the Lone Tree Center on March 11th and 12th. Part of that will be reviewing their long-term plan. Rich Meredith reported at their last meeting and added some details to the Hudson Holidays event. There was over $300,000 in gross. They did experiment with the Living Social tickets and actually sold 10,000 through that facility. And there was attendance of a little more than 42,000 that went through the door. So about the equivalent of the city of Littleton attended Hudson Holidays this past season. Also, Allison Boyd, who coordinates the athletic fields, gave a study at their last board meeting on field usage and high level of children participating in various different sports activities on our fields, so that was kind of nice. The South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce had a Legislative Action Committee meeting last week, and there will be another one this week. Of interest to some folks is that there will be developed with that a scorecard for the local representatives on their business-friendly records during this session. The Economic Development Group next meeting will be on the 11th of this month. And we had talked about doing an inventory and some discussion of the potential park or land acquisition, and I didn't know where that was going to be on the agenda, and I may have missed it on a list somewhere for a future discussion. And that doesn't necessarily have to be answered, but it's a question, so I just didn't want it to get lost. And then I have one other item, but I can't recall what it is, so I'm having a senior moment.
Jim?
Yeah. I had attended a workshop on transit-oriented developments, urban centers, and urban corridors that was put on actually by Dr. Cog. And Dennis Swain was also there. It was primarily designed for planners and how they plan the cities of the future. There's a series of these going on. There'll be another one that'll be occurring sometime in February. The Colorado Municipal League Conference is coming up, and Marlene had sent out a sheet on Thursday with a very short timeline, and I did not respond simply because I needed to find out. The workshop begins on Tuesday afternoon, and I really would like to attend, but if my absence from here with other people who might be going up on that day causes us not to have a quorum, I wanted to be aware of that before I actually signed up to go to this workshop on Tuesday. Because if I go, I won't be here for Tuesday night's meeting.
Which Tuesday?
It's the 21st, Tuesday, June 21st.
Anybody else planning to be absent on June 21st? It's not the,
okay.
It's the
Peggy
23rd,
is.
isn't it? Peggy, are you going to be gone?
Mhm.
Okay. So we can do all sorts of important stuff on that meeting.
You do it with me even here, so I don't care. Okay. Third item is study session topics. We get these every week, but we need to put the PDO process back on there because we removed it from the study session list, so it needs to go back on there. And I would like to see auxiliary dwelling unit scrape-off pop tops be removed. It's been on there for over 2 years or 3 years. I don't know how many years it's been on there.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to see it just be removed and we forget about it.
You are, thank you.
That's all I got.
Deb?
I don't have a report, but I do have a comment on a letter that we got in our packets from Hannah Keeley. She's a 7th grader at St. Mary's, and I was really quite impressed with her letter and the problem she elaborated on, and even more impressed with her suggestion for a solution. And the problem she commented on was the crossing across Prince Street at Lee Gulch and Charlie Emily Park, and the difficulty with traffic coming both of those directions and the speed of that traffic. There's a great amount of foot traffic there, bikes, kids going to school, people using the trail. There's people walking their dogs, so there's an awful lot of activity at that intersection. She actually witnessed a rear-end accident as someone thought too late to slow to let her cross. She wisely saw what was coming, which was another car that couldn't stop fast enough as the car at the intersection did, and hit her, pushed that car into the intersection. She had jumped back to the curb. I'm sure that is not unusual to have a lot of close calls there, because I think it does present kind of a confluence of interesting transportation. Her comment for suggestion was that there's a signal that I have not seen, but she has seen being used in crosswalks, where someone who's entering the crosswalk can trigger a signal that lets people know someone is entering the crosswalk. So as cars are starting to come from further up, either the north or south on Prince, they become aware that not only is there a crosswalk there, but that someone is about to enter it. The lights are flashing, so it creates some attention. There is some hidden visibility from people approaching because of some of the landscape on both sides. So I don't know if it's something we've considered. I don't know if it's something that is being used in other places than where she had seen it. But I think I would like to see us at least look into something like this. I think it would definitely add to the safety of that intersection.
I thought I sent Hannah's letter on to Charlie and asked him and Tim Weaver to look at it. Charlie, am I remembering that right?
Yes, we got the letter, and we did respond to her on Friday, and she made a suggestion that we're looking into. It's a flashing type light that is used at Colorado Academy on Pierce, and we're looking at that. Due to weather, we haven't been out there yet, but she did get a response. I tried to copy all of council on it. You probably haven't received that yet, and the manager, but we did send a very extensive reply
So maybe
back
there's
to her.
hard copy in their packets this
It
week?
wouldn't have been in last week because I just mailed it on Friday. I
Okay.
wrote the response Friday
All right, so
morning. But she wrote a very thorough letter, and we responded back with her with a whole lot of information, and we are going to look into her suggestion and see if it's appropriate for that location.
Charlie? I'm glad Debbie brought that up, because at the last Foundation Board meeting, with doing the trails across major intersections, Bob Stearns had investigated looking at a light that was called a hawk light. You might contact Bob to find about cost and things like that. But it is two yellow flashing lights, and then it turns red for stop. But it is pedestrian actuated, and we're doing it at major crossroads on Holly and Quebec and places like that, where the trail is crossing its surface.
I will check with Mr. Stearns and see what's involved.
Charlie? If I remember right, there is a pedestrian-activated stop signal
At St. Mary's. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
And Hannah mentioned that, but her opinion was, I think, that most people will not walk up there to cross at that intersection.
Not the trail.
I think,
that's-
and I think she analyzes it correctly, because it is not people who are crossing over. It's a continuation of the Lee Gulch Trail, and they won't walk up and create a horseshoe to come back down to cross safely. And there is, I believe, some signage on Prince that does indicate there's pedestrian, there's a sign that says pedestrian, but I think, I've been there a number of times, and it's clear that occasionally someone will slow down and stop, but also others won't. So if you can get some, I love the idea she has of where the pedestrian can trigger that notification to the
I'll see that you get a
drivers.
copy of the letter. We responded, but we are looking into what she suggested. We'll check out what Councilman Taylor also mentioned. We'll look at a number of options and the costs involved to do those, and where other locations might be appropriate for this. As I responded back to her, I said, not only is Lee Gulch and Prince appropriate, but also Lee Gulch and Windermere, Lee Gulch and Alatty are very similar locations where this occurs. So hopefully you get a copy of my response, and you'll see how we address this
It's
issue.
probably more severe at the one at Prince, because with the lights at St. Mary's, folks aren't thinking that there's another cross space.
And the
even though
volume of traffic on Prince is higher than it is at any of the other cross streets.
Even though it is state law.
Anything else?
No.
Bruce?
Okay. Mayor Clark and I attended the South Platte Park Volunteer Dinner on Friday. And it was very well attended. What would you say, 75 people?
Yeah.
Cecily Mew was there, and we gave her the little care package that Kelly and Wendy put together, I think, for us to express our appreciation to her for everything she's done on behalf of the city, some of which was in the video early on this evening. And they had a live black-footed ferret that was there, and there's about maybe, 1,200 of those in the entire world. So the folks that have been repropagating that species, bringing it back from very close to extinction, were sort of the keynote speaker, and they actually had one of the ferrets there, which was sort of a cute little thing. Let's see here. Huh?
Cute?
Yeah, it was cute. It was a ferret. It was great, yeah. Unless you're a prairie dog, then it wasn't so cute.
You got a rancher here with a different opinion.
Oh, okay.
There's a reason they're going extinct.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's cute out of the wild.
All right, it was cute on Friday. However, moving on to Littleton Fire Rescue, Littleton Fire Protection District Board meeting. The ESCI study remains in process and under consideration. It's still an expectation that that will be forthcoming here, maybe toward the end of the first quarter. And obviously, again, we'll get a copy of it, but it's still being considered. They did, and I hadn't, this was a nuance, but apparently the Littleton Fire Rescue has just recently modified their shift structure or shift schedule. And I just thought this was interesting because I didn't actually quite understand the way it worked, so I'll share this. Littleton Fire Rescue personnel essentially have traditionally worked a full 24 hours and then had 24 hours off. Then they work 24 hours, have the next 24 hours off. They work a third 24-hour shift, and then they have 96 hours off. And then that is now being changed per what's becoming more of an industry standard to where they work 48 hours continuous duty, followed by 96 hours off duty. And then that rolls through the staffing process throughout Littleton Fire Rescue. So just for what that's worth, I thought that was an interesting, it never dawned on me, at least, what the actual requirements were as far as what the officers in the fire department actually do in terms of being on call for either what was a 24-hour shift or now is a 48-hour shift. So I thought I'd share that.
Is that a national standard?
I think it's moving that. The one that they were on was called the Berkeley Standard, which I think is nationally transitioning to this 4896. So yeah, it's not.
48?
It's consistent.
What I'm wondering in the fire department, if you don't mind my saying, is how are you going to account for a woman taking care of her children for 48 hours, and then suddenly the old man comes home, and then he's gone for 48 hours.
Right.
It seemed to me like that would be a lot of strain on the family.
The feedback I got from Chief Sino was that there was actually a preference. Maybe, Jim, if you want to talk about this.
If council wants more information on this, but we've actually looked at it for a couple of years. We were kind of reluctant at first, we meaning myself, Phil, and Chief Mullen. My issue was kind of the fatigue issue of doing back-to-back shifts. But in fact, the officers, the fire officers, have really been strongly in favor of this because it gives them more flexibility with their off time. And as we're getting more information from around the country, that there doesn't seem to be any performance or morale issues. And so, but it's something Chief Mullen had discussed to some extent with his crews, and they seem to very much in favor of it.
They do this, I think, at Englewood, don't they?
I'm sorry?
They do this at Englewood?
I think Englewood has gone to this 48 shift concept too.
Work 2 off 5.
What?
Work 2 and off 5? 48, you're
Yeah.
actually?
4.
4.
Work 2 off 4. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe it's if there's a desire to have Chief Mullen come in and talk about it more, maybe that's appropriate. I just wanted to pass it along because I thought it was new information for me, and I thought you might find it interesting. The weekly, ever-popular, often imitated, never duplicated Littleton Merchant Plug of the Week this week is a twofer, courtesy of Mr. Bloston. The first one is G&S Auto Parts, which is located at 5756 South Lowell Boulevard. The phone number is 303-795-1312. G&S Auto Parts and Machine Shops, a family-run business with 32 years of experience, members in good standing and a Gold Star member of the Better Business Bureau and Automotive Engine Rebuilder Association. The people that service the counter are very knowledgeable in all areas of automotive, including antique and new, American and foreign auto parts are in stock. But of importance tonight and tomorrow is they sell batteries, antifreeze, and plug-in heaters for your vehicle, which is certainly pertinent given the temperatures outside. And then the second plug is literally to Savers Thrift Shop on Littleton Boulevard. So go in there and buy yourself a winter coat and go give it to somebody who can use it, because people who need them tonight are in desperate and dire need. And lastly, as I've lived in Colorado now for, my wife and I moved in Colorado in '88, so 23 years, but am a native of the great state of Wisconsin, and therefore am genetically compelled to offer a motion that goes something as follows. I would move that the Littleton City Council extend congratulations to the Green Bay Packers on their impending victory in the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Second.
Excellent. You want to do the honors?
Discussion.
Since my father-in-law is also from Wisconsin.
Cheeseheads.
Can we get a legal interpretation about, can we abstain from this vote?
I think you're outside your jurisdiction.
It's a resolution. All right. That's fine. Thank you.
Jose, save us, please.
Mr. Bloston, this is addressed to you. We just received notification that we're going to clean up the ditch that goes from Ridge Road to the flood control project.
Charlie, come on down to the microphone.
$45,000, if I remember, to clean it up.
The ditch that goes from Ridge Road.
Yeah, there's a drainage ditch.
That was silt.
The silt and all this.
Oh, and the railroad depression, yes.
Yeah, depression, that's it.
Yeah. It's, no, this is a ditch that is actually north of Littleton Boulevard. And it's a drainage ditch in front of the courthouse. And that is the ditch that needs to be cleaned up and extensive volunteer trees removed.
Oh, that's on the north side.
On the north side of the project, yes.
Okay, what I was wondering, I was under the impression that that was going to clean up that ditch over there, which I think has to be cleaned up eventually. If I've walked it just to see how the water flows down to the project and then drops down into the river. There has been a problem up there, and for many years we have on the cemetery, we've got a drain line from the city that's draining right onto our property. Is there any chance that we can get some urban drainage money to correct that situation?
This is the one on the south side of Ridge Road, just west of Prince Street?
Yes.
That goes, urban drainage won't participate in that kind of project, Councilman Torrio. It's not on their major drainage outfall area. It's a total city responsibility for that project. We will.
Timeline is when we're going to get it done.
I will get that to you. We have it on our list of projects. Okay. Let me see where it is in the priority. I couldn't tell you tonight what it is.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Jim, Dr. Cog, report.
The area Committee on Aging did an overview of the four-year plan required by the federal government. Reviewed legislation that's related to the older citizens and did preparation work for the state audit of the Ombudsman program. The Administrative Committee approved 3 contracts with RTD and heard various kinds of reports. The Board of Directors set public hearings for the Transportation Improvement Program for February. It's going to probably be controversial. We were supposed to do it last month, but because of the weather, it takes 30 affirmative votes, 30 yes votes to pass it. We only had 29 people in attendance, so we had to delay it. The 30th person did walk in before the end of the meeting, and the 31st one walked in after the meeting adjourned because they had so much trouble trying to get there because of the weather. But we're going to still delay it until the meeting this month. We approved the delays of selected projects for various reasons throughout the entire region. and we adopted a funding advancement for CDOT to use faster transit funds, and then we took some positions on certain kinds of legislation.
All right, Deb?
I move that City Council convene an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-402, paren 4, subsection paren E, to develop negotiating positions or instruct negotiators related to a real estate, the Sternberg Building.
Second.
Ian, second.
To include,
We don't have to put that in the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to conduct an executive session to instruct negotiators. This takes 5 votes. Discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Bruce. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor, the motion carries.
We will not be conducting any business after we come back, and in there will be city manager.
Myself, Suzanne Start, city attorney, and Charlie Bloston, director of public services.
And the council.
And the council, yes.
All right.